I'm F. William Engdahl. I'm an author, a lecturer on geopolitics. I've published books on the subject in 11 foreign languages, from China to Korea to Germany to Russia to France and beyond. English, of course. And I live here in Europe, have been for some years. And basically what I do with my books is try to shed light on various dark corners so that ordinary people will get an idea of what's been done to us and act accordingly depending on their information.
And tell us about your speech today, which I saw, in relation to the theme, financial terrorism, and how you felt, why you felt it's important to be here.
Okay. Well, I was asked to speak on this tour. It actually started in Dublin a week ago, and yesterday we were in Manchester in Northern England, and today in London at the coincidental time of the Queen's Jubilee, which is a rather bizarre clown show. And the theme of the conference, or the series, is financial terrorism. And my message, I talk about this in my book, The Gods of Money, Wall Street and the Death of the American Century, not the American dollar, but the American century as a system, is that there is no such thing as capitalism, as a closed economic system like feudalism and so. But what we're in, and we've been in for nigh on to 5,000 years now, if you want to count it that way, is a system of hidden debt slavery that certain powerful elites have set up. They had run it out of Venice hundreds of years ago. Then the power of Venice collapsed, and they moved the headquarters of this debt slavery to the city of Amsterdam. That collapsed in the 1790s, and it moved to the Bank of England in the city of London. After World War II in 1944, it moved to Wall Street and the gods of money in Wall Street. So what I went through is the different phases of this crisis building up in the period since Bretton Woods, 1944, in my own lifetime, and to give people an idea, there is no out. We're not in a recession. I've said this on Alex Jones's program, I think about 4 years ago, that this is not an ordinary recession. It's the early phase of a global depression that is going to make the 1930s look mild by comparison, depending on what we ordinary citizens do about it. So we are in the beginning of a massive debt collapse, and of course the masters of money, the gods of money, want to steer that collapse to their advantage, so they get private debt of fraudulent criminal banks like Allied Irish and other banks, most of the big ones, too big to fail, so-called. And they put the burdens of their crimes on the public taxpayer, who were innocent to begin with and had no responsibility for these crimes. And so Greek taxpayers, Irish taxpayers, Spanish taxpayers are now coughing up the money through their own pensions, through their own wages that are being slashed dramatically. And that's the whole austerity theme that has been ravaging Europe for the last several years. And it's not going to get better. These bailouts, smart money knows that these bailouts are a fraud, so they're all preparing to short all these markets and make a huge killing on that. Well, what was launched in what began in Tunisia with the so-called Arab Spring was a rolling destabilization engineered by the Pentagon, engineered by the National Endowment for Democracy, a U.S. government-financed NGO that does today what the CIA used to do 25, 35 years ago, namely regime change to a more Wall Street-friendly order. And what they're trying to do is create what they did with the collapse of the Soviet Union 20 years ago, namely force these countries under the IMF thumb, create chaos, create disinvestment in order to bring control of the vast oil wealth of these countries, the enormous resources and savings of these monarchies and countries under the control of the Wall Street gods of money. Wall Street, the city of London, it doesn't matter much, the distinction. And not only that, but to create this chaos and instability geopolitically because of the emergence of a new economic center of gravity, geopolitical center of gravity, and that's called Eurasia. Eurasia goes from Western Europe, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, Vladivostok, and the easternmost part of Russia, but it includes China and Russia most especially. And to the extent that Brazil and South Africa try to coordinate with that, join in with that, make their trades not in dollars as an intermediate currency, they become part of this. And as I see it, it's a counterweight to one sole superpower dictating to the entire world with the military might of all other countries combined and then some. I think it's much healthier to have a counterweight system of some sort. How it will sort itself out, and whether China will break, whether Russia will break, it's an open question, but after all, life is always an open question. So I think this is the geopolitics of this whole crisis, the Arab Spring and so forth. And what happened in Syria, that was a Pentagon, CIA financed destabilization with Sarkozy's France playing a dirty, dirty role in there. The U.S. tried to get Turkey, the Erdogan government in Turkey, to play the dirty role that Sarkozy played in the Libya bombardment. He was forced to back down because 23% of the Turkish population, I was recently in Turkey for a presentation of the Gods of Money book, and Erdogan was forced to back down because 23% of his own people are Alawite Muslim, the same as al-Assad. And what happened is Russia and China this time, they made the mistake, and I was in China and in Russia, and I talked to people there last fall after the fall of the Gaddafi regime in Libya. They said we were duped, we were lied to by Washington, and we didn't want to get involved, so we stayed neutral in the Security Council vote that allowed them to get away with murder. But this time we've drawn a line in the sand, because if Syria falls, then Iran will fall. Iran is a major source playing outside the music of the Anglo-Saxon debt slavery system right now. So they realize that these dominoes, one by one, if they just keep letting it happen. And that's causing huge headaches in Washington. They, Hillary Clinton acknowledges working with Al-Qaeda. You know, wasn't this Osama bin Laden, this funny fellow with this funny turban back in 2001 that was supposed to be the #1 enemy of America? Now we're working with his organization. Really, do they expect that we're so stupid and so short-term memory as some of these Pentagon planners or State Department planners, or what's really going on here? I think what's going on with Syria, Israel, Iran, and so forth is, frankly, I don't think the government in Israel is at all happy with the Arab Spring in any way, shape, or form. Here you have Muslim Brotherhood regimes coming into power in Egypt. You have them coming into power. The opposition in Syria is Muslim Brotherhood, and it's creating instability on Egypt's borders. I think, if anything, there's a very heavy dialogue covertly going on between Tel Aviv and Damascus about how to stabilize the Assad regime, because he poses no threat to Israel's security, quite the opposite. And Assad plays a crucial role in keeping Lebanon, which is on the Israeli borders, keeping Lebanon stable. So I think it's quite different from how the media is playing it.
Do you think a potential war with Iran down the road, what are the risks for the rest of the world?
I've said this for 5 years. There will be no shooting war, not from the Israeli side. I think the general staff of the Israeli Defense Forces would resign in a minute, and the former Mossad chiefs have said the same thing. Iran does not pose a threat to the security of Israel. There's all sorts of games going on, dog and pony shows and saber rattling, but a war is not going to happen, and certainly not from the side of the U.S. So I don't see that. It's manipulations going on to short different stocks and to play around with the price of oil. Well, Bilderberg, I think some people try to mystify the Bilderberg and make it into the great boogie bear that is controlling the universe. That's rubbish. It was set up by certain U.S. elites in the early 1950s to coordinate policy between European elites, and this is an invitation-only club. each year some politicians are invited because they're useful to the next phase. But for example, in 1973, and I have the actual document, the confidential document from the Bilderberg meeting of May 1973 in Saltsjöbaden, Sweden. I talk about it in my book, Century of War. The oil shock of 1973-4 was actually discussed in the Bilderberg meeting 6 months before the Yom Kippur War, which triggered the Arab oil embargo, predictably, because they said they would do it if the U.S. continued to supply arms to Israel in a one-sided way. So it was a pre-programmed shock that trashed the industrial economy of the West, the United States included, but it created a dollar bonanza. It rescued the dollar from a free fall, and it created a dollar bonanza for Chase Manhattan, Citigroup, J.P. Morgan, and the other Wall Street gods of money banks. It also created a huge bonanza for Exxon, Mobil, the Seven Sisters oil companies, the British and American oil companies, and gave them the loot to use to recycle those petrodollars from the high oil price and bring them in to create the next phase of crisis. The major mainline media in the West is if you want, it's embedded journalism, embedded in the machine of the Pentagon, the State Department, the UK Foreign Office, and NATO. And their job is to spread lies and propaganda so that ordinary people are in a delusional world about what's going on around them, even though they, in their gut, they know that something drastically is wrong. So, for example, the crisis of the euro, well, it has nothing to do with what's said about the Greek economy. The Greek economy is a tiny economy compared with the rest of Euroland. It's financial warfare. The financial warfare was launched at a time the dollar was facing free fall because of the huge take-on of new treasury debt to bail out the banks of Wall Street. And just at that moment, lo and behold, it was discovered that Greece had cheated on its debt back in 2002 to qualify for entry into the euro. And guess who helped them to cheat? Well, none other than Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan Chase. So the Wall Street criminal banks that are behind this crisis, who never seem to end up in court or in jail, which is the least that they are worthy of for what they've done, they're the ones who are orchestrating this as an all-out financial warfare on the one potential rival as a reserve currency to the dollar, and that is the euro on the horizon at the moment. So this thing is playing out. At first, the European governments were naive. They don't understand modern financial markets in the way that London and New York traders understand them. And I think they still don't understand them. They look at it very formally, especially in Germany where I live. But it's warfare. It's warfare, and at this point, as I say in my speeches all across Europe and in Russia and China, wherever I'm invited, in Turkey, is the European elites are schizophrenic. They have two choices. One is to continue the Atlantic relationship with the United States and a sinking Titanic, or they can begin building deeper bridges to the east, to Russia, to China, the countries of Eurasia, and through that build their way out of this paper money crisis with a real economy, real economic growth.